Alvin and the Chipmunks chipwrecked. I have to do that again. Alvin and the Chipmunks chipwrecked. Partly because I can't believe that they actually got away with that pun in the title. Here's the thing.
Do you think the BBFC should have sort of asked them to change it?
Yes, contains painful puns. The thing with Alvin and the Chipmunks is that the franchise is far more important than you'd expect. If you remember, a while ago, it was up there with Avatar in terms of money for films that were actually making money, that was sort of preventing the studios from having a couple of terrible Christmases. If you look back at the numbers, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the first one, took 358 million worldwide. Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel, took 442 million worldwide. So I mean, it's a huge franchise. We can sneer and laugh at it, and it's fine, but it's much more valuable than anybody thinks, and there's serious numbers.
I had to go through the first one.
You had to,
yeah.
But you saying it in a way like that was a terrible thing to. The first one was fine.
Well,
really? Okay.
It was one of those that I took the radio in to listen to the football results.
In that case, you weren't really watching the film. I think the thing about it is that there's been a lot made about me saying that films need to be judged on their own merits, and they need to be judged as to whether or not they work for the audience. As I said, this was the charge that was incorrectly levelled against my review of the Twilight movies. The thing with the first two Alvin and the Chipmunks movies is actually they were fine as far as the target audience were concerned. I saw both of them in cinemas packed with school kids on holiday, and they enjoyed them. And actually, those two movies were fine. So therefore, it is with some sort of sense of the history of this that I'm able to say, I always think of saying, but I don't care what you think of Saw 7 unless you saw 1 to 6. Well, I don't care what you think of Alvin and the Chipmunks 3 unless you saw 1 and 2. And I can tell you, unfortunately, Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked lets down the franchise rather badly. Whenever a story has run out of steam with a franchise movie, what you do is, what can we do? Oh, blimey, we'll send them on holiday. Okay, so Alvin and the Chipmunks get sent on a cruise liner. That's the first thing that should let you know that things have gone awry.
I've worked out what the problem is. The voices, because I agree the story
that is Alvin. That's like saying the problem with Pinky and Perky is the voices.
It is the same Pinky and Perky voice, and I just think that's a very 1950s way of doing a silly animal voice. Whereas after The Lion King, you would think, well, maybe I'd have preferred a kind of a smart comedian voice to be doing the voice. Why do the Chipmunks have to be helium-filled?
So your problem
nonsense?
with Alvin and the Chipmunks is that you don't find the voice funny.
Correct.
Okay. Unfortunately, an awful lot of people do, and in fact, in the first two films, I found that it was not a problem. I agree that in the third film, I thought exactly the same thing, and that tells me not that the voice isn't funny, but that the film had fallen down on its knees, and therefore you start to think, blimey, that voice is grating. What happens is, due to a series of mishaps, they end up chipwrecked and on a desert island where, fantastically we get, the two, we get Justin Lee, who's a friend and mentor, and we get David Cross, who you remember from the first two films is the guy who's the record company executive who's hideously trying to exploit them, because you have to get them because they're the staples. They all end up on the desert island and a new heroine appears, right? So they're now on the desert island with the same crew with a new heroine. Here's the central gag. The new heroine has been marooned on the desert island for such a long time that she is now talking to a basketball. Or, in fact, talking to an assortment of basketballs, talking to a basketball, talking to a tennis ball, talking to a load of balls that are made up to look like people, okay? Right. What's that a reference to? Oh, come on, get with the programme. What's that a reference to?
I have no idea.
It's Castaway. The Tom Hanks film, right? The whole thing is, the gag is, when Tom Hanks is washed up on a desert island in Castaway,
in a big baggy sweater,
he talks to a basketball.
Oh, okay.
Do you not remember this?
I don't remember that, no.
Did you see the film?
Yes.
There's only two characters in the film. One of them is Tom Hanks, and the other one is a basketball. How could you not remember that?
I just remember his sweater.
Fine, okay. Well, unfortunately, what you've now done is undermined the key criticism of this. But this may.
Well, I'm sorry if it doesn't fit in with your
right. So here's the problem.
Criticism.
So the gag is she's been alone for so long. She's talking to basketballs and tennis balls, right? I went to see the movie with a 10-year-old who, at the end of the movie, said, "What was all the stuff about talking to basketballs and tennis balls?" And I said, "Well, of course, that's a reference to Castaway, the Tom Hanks film." To which the 10-year-old said, "I haven't seen that." The whole point being, yeah, exactly. The central gag in that part of the theme is a gag about a film which none of the target audience will have seen. So, therefore, it's either the gag which is doing the nudge, nudge, wink, wink, nod, nod to the grown-ups, which really bothers me because I hate it when kids' films do that. They've got the gag for the grown-ups and the gags for the kids, when actually it should be the gag for everybody. And it's a central and fairly drawn-out gag about Castaway, that manages not to be funny for anybody at all. Plus, for the first time ever, you see Justin Lee and David Cross, who actually David Cross gets all the best lines because he's the snarky record company executive who's meant to be the sort of slightly wicked character. And in the first two movies, he's been quite funny. And in fact, both he and the nice guy have looked like they're okay. For the first time in this one, you actually get the sense that you can see them between takes going, blimey, what are we doing here? Oh, and then remembering that what they're doing there is they're earning, either 347 million or 452 million worldwide. And I think the greatest indication of just how much the film had fallen down was every time it cut away, I could see them in my mind's eye, off camera, going, oh, blimey. But then remembering that what they're doing is paying the rent. And once you get to the point that the central human characters, that they don't actually find the joke funny anymore, but they are there because the thing is such a big franchise, that's when you know it's sunk. The problem with Alvin and the Chipmunks Chipwrecked is not that it's an Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. It's not that the central gag is essentially people doing a helium voice like Pinky and Perky, because that's Alvin and the Chipmunks. The problem is it's not as good as the first two Alvin and the Chipmunks movies, and it's let down the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise. And believe me, I never thought I'd say those words out loud, but the fact of the matter is the first two movies did what they did perfectly fine, and the human characters did the comedy perfectly fine, and the animation did the stuff perfectly fine, and the helium voices were perfectly fine. In the third one, it's holiday on the buses with shipwrecks and jokes about Castaway, which is a film that the kids haven't seen. Big thumbs down. Big disappointment.